The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi there, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Valora Hammond, and I'm here to present a Digitizer, a Janome Digitizer MBX webinar. So what we're going to be doing today is a in-the-hoop crossbody bag. I have seen where these in-the-hoop projects have become so successful with all the other design manufacturers out there, and I never realized it until I actually did one, how much fun it is to actually do a project that you're complete with all in the embroidery machine. Almost. We have to do the handle outside, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Please, if there's any questions, go along the way. I will try to address them as I see that they pop up. So again, what we're going to do is an in-the-hoop crossbody bag. So in the digitizing process, what we're going to do is we're going to put an initial on the front of the bag, and on the back of the bag, we're going to put an extra pocket. So this is actually a two-pocket, or one major pocket and a little accessory pocket bag. And it's all going to be done in the hoop. Putting in the zipper in the hoop, those of you who are freaking out because we're putting in a zipper, that's all done in the hoop. And actually I found out that the bag is large enough to hold the iPad, the standard iPad that I have. So I'm really excited that I can now carry my iPad and a wallet, lipstick, identification, whatever I need when I go out for dinner, when I go shopping, or when I go to the doctor's office, or anytime I need my iPad with me. So I'm really excited about the size of it, because I do like a smaller purse that holds just what I need, because I don't like my shoulders to hurt. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and talk about the products that we're going to be using. We're going to be using two hoops. We're going to use the GR hoop and the square 23 hoop, and we're actually going to be creating 3 embroidery files. So we've got the front, we've got the back, and we've got the pocket. So there's going to be 3 of them. We do need the P hoop. The 2 and 3 spool stands are wonderful to have those spools available, those threads. If you do desire to finish off the seams, the M foot for your seam finishes before you turn it right side out is really a nice way to kind of finish off the inside. Even though the inside will have fabric on it, it's not quote-unquote lined, as in the seams aren't concealed. So that's a nice way to finish those off on the inside. Then we're going to do the traditional standard red tip Janome needles, pre-wound bobbins. So that's what we've got. The other products is, I always like to use the Janome thread. I just find that it works really well for me. The artistic metallic thread, you know, a little bling goes a long ways, and I love working with metallic thread. And what I have found, the reason I like working with metallic thread, you'll see that I've got the thread director up there. If you have not explored the thread director or asked your dealer about carrying it, it is a godsend when working with metallic thread. I just can't speak highly enough about it. I've received one, and I can stitch for hours with metallic thread and not have an issue. So please ask your dealer about that. And I see we've got our 2 or 5 thread spool stand referred to again. So you know I like those. We are using Jenny Haskins water soluble stabilizer. And I like using Quilt Magic Plus. It's a Jenny Haskins product. It is a double-sided fusible batting. And I like it because it's really nice for small projects, because I can just fuse it together, and I really don't have to worry about my product sliding around inside of it. This is really nice because I can, when I fold my fabric over to create a folded edge and I fuse it, I know that batting is right in the edge of that, and it's not going to be shifting on me. I just really like it for small projects because it keeps everything where it's supposed to be while you do your project. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And like I said earlier, we've got 3 hoopings. We're going to create the front here. We're going to create the back pocket, and then we're going to create a guideline in order to do a sew and flip process to sew the pocket onto the back of it. Now, this design here, the star design, came from a font called 90 Star BRK. And that font is available both at DaFont and 1001fonts.com. I love working with these graphic fonts. I don't consider myself very artistic, but these graphic fonts work like lettering, so you're going to find them in your lettering process of the Digitizer. And because they're a graphic font, they're not always perfectly done like the 100 fonts that come with the software will be when it's lettering, but that graphic font really does give you a lot of opportunities to explore other designs brought in and to possibly use them in other ways. So let me switch over to my Digitizer, and let's go ahead and open that up. All right, I hope everybody's got your instructions in front of you. I'm really excited about presenting this, so I want to just jump right in and get started. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to work in easy design. We are going to choose the GR hoop for the 15 or the 12,000. If you have other machines, you're going to have to accommodate your hoop size accordingly. If not, I'm sure your dealer can help you find a hoop the size that will work. It probably will include a new machine, but that's okay. So let's talk about what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our environment so that it's going to work for us. So what does that mean? That means we're going to go up to Setup and go into work environments. Our grid naturally comes in at a 0.4 inch. Now that is really 10 millimeters in everybody else's language. So I like to leave it generally at a 0.4 because I know the grid on my sewing machine, the grid on my templates, and the grid in the software are all going to be the same size. But I'm going to be using the grid as a measuring device today. So I want that grid to come in at a 0.5 inch, right there. So I know now that every gap between my grid lines is going to be a half of an inch. That is just going to make it much easier for me to figure out where I need to lay my placement guidelines. So once we've got that changed to 0.5, we're going to go ahead and say OK, and that will change that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to build an outline that shows the size of our bag. I found what I like to do the easiest way is I'm just going to open up the parallel weave fill rectangle, and I'm just going to left click and drag from the one corners. As you guys have noticed about me, I'm a let's create it and then let's tweak it type of person. So I like to go in and I like to say, okay, give me something to work with. Once I got this to work with, I'm going to, a couple of ways we can go into object details. We've worked with this before. We can left click quick twice. We can right click and go into objects. Okay, we have to select it, then we right click, go into object details. We go down here to the object details icon, or we can left click really fast. Now that's just what I did, is I left click really fast. Comes on, allows me to change my dimensions in here, or my features of that object. For the dimensions, we're going to make the dimensions 8 3/4, so 8.75 by 11 inches. So that's going to be the size of our project. So it's really easy to put exactly the measurements I want in here. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and select that, and I'm going to just put an outline around that. So I'm going to go down here to Offsets and Outlines, and I'm going to tell it to do a single run line with black. Again, if you guys have noticed me, I don't care what color it is as long as I've got color stops. So we're going to go ahead and do black. We're going to say OK. That gives me an outline. I know over here in my resequence, when I'm looking at my objects, I've got my fill and I've got my outline. So now all we have to do, oh, you know what? The direction says it's a triple run line. And the reason it's going to be a triple, so we need to change that. That's easy enough to change. We all know how. We're going to click on that. We're going to go into Object Details. We're going to change that to a triple. That is going to be the object that sews all of our bag together. So I like to do a triple run line around that just so that it stays extra strong when all the pockets are sewn together. So we're just going to go ahead and say OK now. And it'd be nice if I read the directions. OK. After that, we're going to select the block of filled stitches and we're going to delete them. So we're just going to hit delete on the keyboard. Now all we have is an outline of the size of our bag. Let's go ahead and center it using the pie shape down there in our hoop. So we know that that is now centered in our hoop. We've got 1/2 inch between each grid. Now, as you guys have watched me, I like to give extra guidelines along the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll in to the really close. Okay. Now you see these rulers along this side here. This is going to allow us to put a guideline at the location where we're going to be putting that zipper. Now I like to put that zipper, let's zoom in a little bit, at the 3.5 mark. So you see that we've got 3 and we've got 4 up here. That means that's 3 inches from the center. That's 4 inches from the center. So we're going to go in and we're going to do, just click right on that 1/2 inch mark right there. Now you can see I didn't quite get that, so I can just click and drag that down to where it ends up on that grid line. So now that we're working right there, see, my grid line now is a solid line. That is going to be the center location for my zipper. Okay? All right, let's zoom back out. Once we're back out, we see that guideline across there. Most zippers, or the zippers I've been using, are about 1 inch wide. So now you understand why we're doing that 1/2 inch. We now know that we're going to go up here and up here on each side of that guideline to create a placement guide for our zipper. So we're just going to go over here and do a single run line. We're going to click on that. We're going to scroll in. We're going to click on that guideline, that 1/2 inch from that mark that we just made. And if you hold down Control, you will see that that line will snap into 15-degree angles. So I can make sure that when I go straight over, that line is going to be perfectly straight. So I'm going to go over a little bit to the outside of my bag, and then I placed it. I'm going to hit Enter. That line is now created. Okay? So now all we have to do is select that line again. Let's go down to the fickled finger. It's selected. We're going to hit Control D, and we've created 2 lines. I'm going to go ahead and move that down. I'm using the arrows on my keyboard so that I don't wiggle it all over the place. I'm bringing it straight down to 1/2 inch below that guideline. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that line and I'm going to flip it side to side. So because I flipped it side to side, it's going to start here because that's where I started to digitize it. It's going to come over here. It's going to cut the thread. And instead of going over here to start again, it's just going to come down here and come over here to start. Now we remember what that little maze box means. That little maze box means that it was the last stitch digitized. So right now that is the last stitch. So we're going to stitch our guideline here, and then we're going to place the zipper. All right, so now how are we going to do the process of putting in the zipper? So once we have these lines, we're going to select that top line, and we're going to do a Control D. So it's going to duplicate it, but we're going to change the color of it. And I don't care what color, we want a color stop between these lines. So we've created that. We know now that this is 1/2 inch, we're going to move that line down about 1/8 inch. Okay? Yep. And again, I'm using the arrows on my keyboard. So now when we lay that zipper tape down to this edge, the next line is going to come in and sew right along the edge of that zipper line. We're going to do the same thing with the bottom line. We're going to select it. We're going to do Control D. We're going to choose the same color. And you see now over here we've got the outside line. We've got the zipper placement. We've got one side of the zipper sewed down. We've got the second side of the zipper sewed down, but we need to move that up about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so this is our process. We're going to lay down our placement line, lay down our zipper, and tape it into place. We're going to sew the zipper to the fusible mesh, or the mesh, no-show mesh. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to have another stitch line that will sew down our fabric to the no-show mesh. So we're going to repeat that process. We're going to select that line. We're going to do a Control D. We're going to change the color. Let's change it to yellow. And we're going to move that now another 1/8 of an inch. So we really should be about half of that grid line. So we've got that one placed. We're going to do the same thing with that lower one. Control D, select the same color so that the machine really doesn't have to stop between the two. And we're just going to move that up about 1/8 of an inch. So this is our zipper placement. Okay, now what else we're going to do is we're going to take those 2 last stitches that we created, and we're going to go into our object details, and we're going to turn those into a triple run line. Now the reason we're turning those into a triple run line is that's going to be what sews our sandwich down, our quilt sandwich, to the zipper. So we want that zipper really hard, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty hard on my zippers and my bags. That seems to be the first thing that comes undone is my zippers. All right. So let's repeat that process, or let's see what that process does. Okay, so the far outside lines are going to be our zipper placement. The next line in is actually going to be sewing the zipper to the no-show mesh. And the third line, the most inner line, is going to be the one that is actually going to sew our fabric to the zipper. Okay, has everybody got that? I hope so. I'm going to check to see if there's any questions. Let me see if I can remember how to do that. Seems like it's been a while. Okay, so far no questions. Awesome. All right, so now what are we going to do? We're going to go in and we're going to put an initial, because you know everything is monogramming, and with the holidays coming up, if you monogram it, they can't re-gift it. So we're going to monogram everything, aren't we? All right, let's go up into our monogramming function, which is our ABC up here. And it's going to be up to you, but I kind of like just one initial. In one way, I know somebody, I just did a program the other day somebody only wanted to do one initial, because she's like, I want to have this as a spare gift, just in case somebody comes with a gift for me. Most of my friends have this last initial. So my mother always did that too. She always had that extra gift that was sort of generic for that person who brings you a gift that you weren't expecting. So it gives you an extra one. All right, my last name is Hammond, so of course we know it's going to be all about me. So I just went ahead and I entered the H. It's underneath my hoop here. And I liked, the sample was actually using Fable. So we've got over 100 different fonts. Some letters are better in different fonts than others. I kind of like that sort of whimsical look that Fable gave me. So it was obviously alphabetically, it was Fable. I chose 2 inches. You can do it higher. So please, whatever is aesthetically pleasing to you, feel free to play around with it. That's how we learn our software, is by playing around with it. All right. So once we've done that, we see that our satin stitch is going to be really wide. And if you guys have watched me before, we know that that's going to be an issue when we have a satin stitch that's too wide. So right now we're going to go into Modify Details, And we're going to tell it to do the fill stitch, which is still going to be a satin, but we're going to tell it to do an auto split. I really like the look of an auto split because it adds stitches, but it doesn't make it flat like a weave. It still looks sort of like a satin stitch, but it's more stable. So once we do an auto split, we're going to go ahead and say, okay. You see now that we've got a little stitch going down the middle of it, and it actually is a very nice feature to be able to do. Okay, once we have that, we need to surround it. We need to do a border around it. So once we select the border, we're just going to go ahead, and we're still in our monogramming section. We're going to go add. When we go add, these are the symbols or all of the different fonts or the borders that we can do. You see that it's in gray. If I click this little leaf section up here and it shows it in true view, you actually get to see what it looks like in stitches. So now we all have different choices of what we like. I've done a few with the Q, which is really nice, done some with the U. This particular project I chose P just because it was kind of a nice way to frame that out. So once you select the P and it goes here, you're going to go OK. You see it snap into place. Once it snaps into place, we have the option of where we want that border to be in relationship to our letter. So that's what that offset means. That offset says that I'm going to be 0.2 of an inch away from my letter. Well, I liked it a little bit closer. I like it to be cozy. So you can see now by changing it to 0.1, it's 0.1 of an inch from the edge of my letter. All right. Once we're there, we can change the aspect ratio. What the aspect ratio does is by going up, it's actually making it wider than it is taller. Notice how it's stretched out this way and it's kind of coming in that way. And if you go in the opposite direction, it does just the opposite. It brings it in narrower as it's bringing it down to closer on the sides but higher on the top. So just play around with that until you get it sort of where you liked it. And let's see, where do I like it? You know, I think for this one, I think the 1-to-1 ratio is actually fairly good for my letter. It all depends upon your letter, the width of your letter, how you want to put it in. But I think I left mine at 1-to-1. Okay, we are going to do some modifying details. Okay, I don't think that satin stitch there is wide enough to accommodate the width of my letter. You know it's all about proportion. So let's go up here and let's change it to anywhere between 12 and 15 is how I like to bulk out my border. I believe the directions say 12, but play around with it. See what you like. This is only in our software. We can change anything. So there I went ahead and changed it to a 0.12 or a 0.15. And I think that is going to be pretty good for what we want. So we're going to go ahead. Second thought, what you might want to do, and this is all a design option, is if you want those two objects to be in stitched out in different colors, you would make your border another color so that you would be able to stitch it out in a separate color than the monogram. That's going to be entirely up to you whether you like lots of color in an object or whether you want to do everything all one color. I'm going to choose something other than black because black is sometimes a default color. So we're going to do pink. Once we've got that, we're going to go OK. And now we can just click and drag that over to any place in that you want. Now that's looks a little weak. So now at this point, I can go ahead and make it now any size I want. Like I said, you guys remember I'm one of those instant gratification people. I create it and then I tweak it. Okay, now I do actually like that better. It looks just a little bit better in proportion to my bag and everything. So we've got that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do Ambiance Quilting. Now one thing I found out about Ambiance Quilting that I thought was very interesting. I'm going to see if there's any more questions. Don't find any. Okay. Must be clear as mud then. One thing I find out about Ambiance Quilting is that if you have an enclosed object around like what we have with that very first object that we created, it doesn't see an area that it needs to quilt around. So that is what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're just going to set this off to the side. Okay, that's all we're going to do is put it off to the side and leave it by itself. Okay, so once we've got that, we're going to go down and select our Ambiance Quilting. Before I have that window come up, I'm going to explain to you where we're going to do Ambient Quilting. We're going to do an Ambiance Quilting around that letter below the zipper and actually below that zipper stitch line that we did, that yellow line. And then we're going to do it above the yellow line to the top of the bag so that that whole front of the bag is going to have Ambiance Quilting on it. Okay, that's where we're going to place this. So we're going to go down here to the icon for Ambiance Quilting. We're going to turn it on. This block, and I played around till I found the right size. So if you're choosing to do this in different sizes, just play around with it to figure it out. This block was actually 8.75 by 8.75. So it ended up being a square, okay? I like to do the Echo quilting type, and what we're going to do is instead of using the design center, we're going to digitize the center. Now what that means is that we're going to be attached, the area, this 8.75 is going to be attached to our mouse, and wherever we take our mouse and decide that that's where we want the square, then we're going to drop it. So it could be anywhere, but we all know we're going to do it in that bottom bag. But once we say OK, see how it defaults to black? Once we say OK, see how it's attached to my mouse? That's going to be where the Ambient Quilting is going to go. So I want it center right there. And I found out that if I put it right on that stitch line, so that yellow stitch line that we have, okay, let me get it centered again, and click, that quilting will come in right where I want it. Now, what do I mean by right where I want it? I go up here and see this black line. This black line is about the same distance from my zipper stitch down line as it is from the other echo stitching. That's just kind of how I roll. That's the way I kind of like my echo stitching to be the same distance from my zipper stitch down. So there I've got my echo stitching. Looks very nice. All right. So once we've got that, we have to go and do the top part of the pocket. So all we're going to do is we're going to go to our Ambiance Quilting again. This time the height of our pocket is 1.75. Okay. Once we have that, it's going to be Echo again. We're going to digitize our center. I didn't tell you about the design margins and the line spacing. I just found I liked 0.2, 0.2, 0.2 for all of them. I'm not a fussy person. I found I like that. That's what I'm going to go with. Once we go OK, we're going to move this up. Again, we're going to center in our hoop. We're going to bring it down. I think this one has to be placed about the distance we want it from that yellow line because of the way it digitizes out. Okay, no, okay, we've got that a little far. We're just going to grab those lines and bring that down basically till it touches the edge of our zipper. So this is our stitch line and this is going to be the edge of our zipper. So that's about where we want it to be. And because it's a little bit different than the last one is because of our measurement of the overall echo stitching. So once we have that, we're going to click that off. We're going to take the outside line. We are going to auto center it and place it into place. Then we're going to take that line, even though that was the first thing we created, we're going to move it all the way down to the bottom because that's going to be the last thing we stitch when we're putting our bag together. So when we go to stitch it out, the first thing it's going to stitch is only the placement for the zipper. So then we're going to lay our zipper across side to side, and then we're going to go stitch the zipper down to the I'm sorry, it's not no-show mesh. It's water-soluble. Water-soluble stabilizer. Then we're going to lay down our fabric, and that's going to stitch the zipper down. Okay, so that's the bag front, or that's going to be the large pocket. Okay, so now what we have to do is we're going to open up another design, and we are going to go into the square 23 hoop. So it's going to be the smaller of the two because our pocket is going to be a little bit smaller. Okay, we're going to go into setup again. Our work environment is going to be, now the reason it didn't save it is because we didn't tell it to save down here. Now we don't really want to. We're only going to be using this measurement for this project. If we did that save, it would save that every time we opened up that window, that measurement would be 5/10 of an inch. But we want to keep that 4/10 of an inch from all of our grid lines. So we're going to leave it at a 1/2 of an inch, or make it at a 1/2 an inch, go OK. Now I'm going to scroll in, and this measurement, we're going to go along the side till we find 2.5. So there's our 2. I've scrolled in pretty close. There's our 3. So we know that we want that guideline right there on that mark. And it asked me, and I'm like, okay, well, that's the first time I've seen that, go okay. So that guideline now is at the 2.5 inch mark. Okay, now we're going to cheat. Okay, we don't have to recreate those zipper placement lines. What we're going to do is we're going to go window, and we're going to tell it to tile vertically. So now we've got, okay, let me see. I've got a few other windows open here. Okay, here's our design that we created. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to select our zipper placement. So it's going to be those first 6 stitches, okay, or objects. Once we've got those selected, we're going to go up here and we're going to tell it to copy. Then we're going to click on the square 23 hoop. We're going to bring that down, and we are going to now paste. Okay, so now we've got that. You know what, while we're here in Design 4, let's go ahead and do a Save As, just so that we know what that design is going to be called. So let's do File, Save As. I've got a folder called my Pocket Bag, and I'm going to call this Web Bag, because this is the one I created during the webinar. It's going to save it as a Jan, and that's good. We're going to go ahead and say Save. Now, if you wanted to, you could go ahead up here and write to your external media. And right there is my web bag. I've got a USB stick in. I'm going to go ahead and save it. You could send it wirelessly, however you want to do it. It's there. We are now done with that window. Let me go back up and tile vertically again. So we're now done with that window. We just needed to steal that zipper placement line. So we're going to go ahead and X that out. We're going to say yes. We've got here, we're going to open this up. Okay, so now that we've got our zipper placement guide there, all we need to do is move that down so it's right over that guideline that we've created. Okay, and I just use the arrows on my keyboard. I can get a lot more precise placement without having to wiggle around. Okay, so now that is our zipper placement for our small pocket. Okay, so we've basically created our pocket, but we've got, of course, you know I'm not that simple. We've got more things to do with it. All right, so what are we going to do? This is where we're going to go in and put in that star. Okay, so we're going to click off of that. We're going to go up here to our lettering. So once we click the lettering, it's going to ask us what font we want. We're going to click on the drop down arrow, and we're going to scroll all the way down past the digitized fonts to our true type fonts. Okay, now I found that for mine, that design, that star design, was the very first true type font up there. I'm not sure why it is, probably because it starts with a number instead of a letter. So I see that these are my stars. I'm going to click on that. Once it's selected, even though it doesn't have a name up here, I see that it's stars. We're going to want to know what the object looks like, because the way a graphic font works is that every design is associated to a letter. So if we don't know what that letter is going to give us, you can have fun and randomly select any letter, but some of us like to have a little bit more control. So if we would go into Insert Symbols, I found that with this, I really wanted not to have the true view on, because it does take a really long time to digitize these fonts in a true view. So if you're having a problem, it snapped on pretty fast now, but it was actually much better in the non-true view version. So let's go ahead, let it bring up. I made it really simple, but these designs are so fun. I like sort of lacy snowflakes, stars, such like that. So this is how you can see what a graphic font and what symbol represents the design. So for class, we're going to use this one here. It's signified by the $sign, but when you click on it, it's going to come down here, and you're going to say OK, and you're going to look up here and go, well, I didn't pick the $sign, but you did. That's the symbol that represents the star that we want. Okay, so once we have that, we're going to go in here and we're going to change the size. Now the instructions say 4. I was playing around with it this morning, and 4 seemed a little bit large, but for those of you that like to go big or go home, go ahead and do 4. They're beautiful stitched out. So I'm going to stay with 4 because that's what I wrote. So let's go OK. Now we're just going to go in here and we're going to click where we want that design to go. So it's going ahead and bringing it in. Like all of the true type fonts, it does take a little while to do it because it actually has to digitize it in order to drop it down. So let's just mosey it on down a little bit in the hoop. Now this is where you can play with the size. If you see that and you think it's a little bit large for the pocket, please go ahead and adjust as necessary or as needed. Okay, once I brought that in, I started evaluating it, and because it's a true type font, it's got some funkiness going on in here, and I could have selected it and gone into object details and changed it to a weave fill, and it changes it a little bit, but it's still a fairly heavy design for what I want. So what we're going to do is we're just going to outline it. The outlining is going to give us the effect that we want. So we're just going to go into Objects and Outlines, and here we're going to choose the backstitch line. I found that I really kind of like this. It's a little bit different than a triple line, but it's a backstitch line. Let's see. Let's leave it at black. Let's go OK. And for some reason or another, when we go into an outline, it took away the weave fill without us doing it. Okay, now a couple of other things that I found along the way. I have these little lines in here. Not quite sure what they are because this was a graphic font, but what I found was if I take this and I left click and I left click to drag it away to create a clone, I found out that I don't have those lines. So for just me, it was a clearer vision of where the stitches are going to go. So I'm just going to select the one that's in the center, hit delete, select it again, hit delete. So I'm going to move this one design back over to where I want it to be, right there. Now, I am a little bit picky about what happens. So I'm going to go in here and I see that I've got some little flyouts. I'm not quite sure what they are, but you know what? They're not going to bother me because I'm going to get rid of them. So while that object is still selected, I'm going to do my reshape. I'm going to go in, I'm going to select that node, I'm going to hit delete. And I'm going to do that with all of those little bits and pieces that have been stuck out. And that's just because it was a true type font and the software did as good of a job as it could to digitize it with embroidery. All right, so there we've cleaned it up. We're going to go ahead and close it so it looks pretty good. One of the other things I like to do with the back stitch is when I select it, I'm going to go into Object Details again. We can change the stitch length. I don't know what the stitch length defaulted in, but I like the stitch length at 10. The stitch thickness, this is where I like it a little bit better than a triple stitch because I can control how thick this stitch looks. Not quite sure how that happens, but I think it's where that other stitch comes in beside it. And then I want a 70% overlap. So that's saying that the stitch is going to go over each other 70% of the way instead of 30%, which is the default. And a triple stitch would be 100. So it just gives it a little bit more character maybe. So once we have that, we're going to go ahead and say OK. So now we've got the design in the middle of our bag. What we're going to do is we're going to go right back into Ambient Quilting. So let's go to Ambient Quilting. We're going to choose your echo stitching, but the size of this quilt is going to be 6 3/4, 6.75 by 8.75. So 8.75 is always going to be the width. The 6.75 is how far below the zipper do we want it to go. We're going to leave all of these settings the same, 222. We're going to do an echo. We're going to digitize the center. So again, we're going to bring this in and place it in that lower part of the bag. And see, I'm centering it right on that center line, and I'm clicking. So right there, we've got that. It comes down still within the hoop, comes up here about the same distance from that triple line down to that first black outline. So there we've got it. All right, I know what I forgot. Let's go back in and change the color of that star, just so that you have the option of making the star a different color than your stippling. So we've got that. We're just going to do a rinse and repeat for the upper part. The upper is the same size as the front of the bag, so it's 1.75, and everything's the same, and we're going to go ahead and say OK. And we're going to bring that on in and place that right on that zipper line. And there we go. And that is the pocket. So let's do File, Save As. And let's call this, I'm going to call this Web Pocket. Web Pocket. There we go. We're going to save that now. So now we'll know what that is. You could go ahead and save it to your USB stick at this time if you wanted to. All right, so now we're ready to do the pocket back. Now this next step is going to seem a little odd because I found out I needed to go someplace in order to do this next step. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up, oh, where did it go? I think, did I save it? Web bag. We're going to go up to the first design that we created. So we're going to go and open up web bag. All right, so there's our design. Now the bag back, all it has is quilting on it. We didn't do anything else to it. So what it had, Ambiance Quilting has to have something in order to quilt around or to think it's going to quilt around. So that's why we had to bring up the web bag again to get the size of the quilting that we need for the back. So we've got that here. We're going to go to our Ambiance Quilting. But now we're going to make this 11 inches high because this is the entire size of our bag by 8.7. It's going to be 222. We're going to digitize center. This time we're going to choose a scroll. Now the reason I chose a scroll instead of echo is because with an echo stitch each line is individual. So it starts and it stops and then it jumps to the next line. With the scroll, because it's going to be covered by the pocket, it's going to look like it's an echo stitch, but nobody's going to see that it's a continuous run line. I just found it stitched quicker if it was a continuous line all the way around instead of having to do each individual lines. So that's the only reason we're changing it to a scroll. So we're going to go ahead and say, okay, there's the size of my bag. You can put it over it if you want to, but we don't want it there. We're just going to click in the area. This is faking out the software to think that it's got an area that it's going to do an ambiance quilt around without doing it. It's just my way of tricking things. So there's my scroll. It's just going to be a continuous stitch line all the way around. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select it. We're going to cut that. So we're going to cut it out because we don't need it on that bag. We're going to open up a new window. We're going to make sure that it's in the GR hoop. And now we're going to paste it. Well, because it was outside of the bag front, it's outside of the new design. Because whenever you copy and paste, it's always going to paste it in the same location in your work screen as where it was that you copied it from. So the easy part now is just going to auto-center it. We auto-centered it, hit enter or the green check mark, and I know this sounds weird, but that's our bag back. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lay down our quilt sandwich. This one doesn't have to have a folded edge. It can be just two pieces of fabric bigger than the embroidery field of our hoop, and then quilt that together. But we're not done with the bag back. What we've got to do is figure out where we're going to need to lay that pocket in order to stitch that zipper, to stitch it down on the back. I'm going to double check to make sure there's no messages. Okay, so we don't have any messages. All right. Okay, so let's go up here. Let's go ahead. Okay, I've got all of these windows open. Let's go in and minimize the, we're done with the web bag, so let's go ahead and close it out. We've saved it. So we're going to go ahead and say yes. We're going to go up to Windows, Tile Vertically. So now we have, for me, on my left, I have the bag back, and on my right, I have the pocket. Okay? So now what we have to do is we have to figure out where that pocket goes in relationship to the back. So all we're going to do is we're going to select that entire pocket back. We're going to copy. We're going to click on the bag back where we want it to go, and we're going to paste it. Okay? While it's still highlighted, let's go in to group it so that when we start moving it, it won't fall apart. Okay, so I came in the center of the hoop. We're just going to move it on down to the bottom part. Okay, so this is our pattern piece. This is what we're using this for, is our pattern piece. So I just moved it down so that the stitching, the quilting of the star is at the same location as the bag back. All right, now we're going to go up here and see where the placement is up here. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to be able to sew this pocket on in this location right across the top there. Okay, so we're going to go in and we're going to choose our single run line, and we're going to run right across the top of that stitch out. So we're going to hold down Control so that we get a straight line. We're going to go all the way over to the edge of our hoop. And so now we've got that stitched down line. That is going to be what's going to hold the pocket in place. So now what we can do is we can stitch on up, click on that bag back and delete it. that was only being used as a pattern piece. Okay, so now we've got our piece up here that is going to stitch our pocket down. But we still don't know where we need to lay the pocket in order to get it placed right. So what we're going to do is we're going to select that line right there. We're going to hit Control D so that we duplicate it. And we're going to bring it down approximately 1/4 of an inch. Okay? We don't need this web pocket anymore, so it's already been saved. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. I'm going to open this up so I've got that all the way. Now, I don't believe we changed our setup to 1/2 of an inch. So let's go in and change it to 1/2 of an inch. That way it will give us a better guide to where our 1/4 of an inch seam is going to be. Okay, so here we've got this line here. This is our stitch down line. So we need approximately 1/4 of an inch below that. Okay? Now what that line that we just created is going to do, that is our guideline. We're going to stitch that down, then we're going to lay our pocket face down with the cut edge, because we're going to trim just the top of our pocket 1/4 of an inch beyond our echo stitching. So then we're going to lay our pocket there. This stitch here will stitch our pocket onto our bag back while we're in the hoop. So what does that mean? That means they have to be 2 different colors. So we've got now 2 different colors, and they need to be resequenced. We need to do our placement line before we do our stitch down line. So now we've got, it's going to stitch our quilting. We're going to stitch the placement line. We're going to lay our pocket down, face down, go into the back of the machine. It's going to stitch the pocket on. We're going to flip it over, and then we're going to take this line again. We're going to do a Control D. We're going to change that to yellow because that's going to be our top stitch line, and we're going to turn that into a triple run line. So now we've got the triple run line, and now that is our pocket back. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through the steps of how we're going to stitch it out. Now that we've made 3 of these designs, you're going to stitch out the bag back first. I'm sorry, no. Take that back. You're going to stitch out the pocket first. Once you stitch out the pocket first, at the very top of the pocket, you're going to trim it down to 1/4 of an inch from the echo stitching. Okay, so once you have the pocket, then you're going to stitch the bag back. So once you've got the bag back quilted, it's going to show you this placement line. So you're going to lay the cut edge of the bag on there, right sides together. It's going to stitch it down here. Then you're going to flip it down so the bag comes to the bottom part here. And then that yellow line is going to do that top stitching so that that pocket lays nice and flat. Okay? Once that's done, you're going to take this out of the hoop and trim it down to about 1/2 of an inch all the way around from the stitching. That's going to give it almost within the embroidery field. Okay? So then once you've got the bag back done, you're going to go ahead and you're going to stitch out the front of the bag. And then as it's going to be the very last step, remember it was that triple stitch outline, you're going to lay the bag back face down, so it's going to be right sides together, and you're going to stitch around it. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and let's see what those steps are again. Okay, now that was fun digitizing it. Let's put it all together now. So this is a little bit of a demo along the way. So in the square hoop, we're going to do the water soluble. We lay down the zipper. Now, I know a lot of people have been using like painter's tape or a Floriani placement perfect tape, stuff like that. What I like to do is when I use a sticky water soluble, I save the parts that I don't peel the paper off, and I cut it into my own little Scotch tape strips, because then I can tape that down and the zipper can sew through it, and the first time I wash it, all of my tape, quote unquote, my wash away tape will go away. So that's how I use my water soluble sticky leftovers, the stuff that's outside the hoop. So there's always a purpose for it. All right, so then it's going to go in and it's going to stitch down the zipper to secure it. Then you're going to lay your pockets with the fold. Remember, we've taken that fold along the batting. We're going to put that fold right along that zipper edge, stitch that down, and then finish the quilting. Okay, let me do full. Okay, so now with the back, we quilted the back. We've got a stitch line right there that showed us where to put the pocket back. So we put the pocket face down, and it's trimming right along there. Okay, so it's going to stitch that zipper right down there. Then you're going to fold it and sew it all the way down. Now at this point, you're going to want to unzip the zippers halfway. So once you've got your pocket made, because we haven't stitched all the way around, you're going to want to unzip the zippers. So now with the front, we're going to do the placement line for the zipper. We're going to place the zipper face up. We're going to stitch the zipper down. We're going to place the fold of the front pieces right across the top. So the fold where we folded the fabric over the batting, that is going to be right along the zipper teeth. All right, so then we're going to finish up the quilting. We're going to unzip the zipper halfway. And at this point, you're going to place the loops. So we need 2 loops in order to hang our bag or to use a strap on our bag. They were just a double fold straight grain strip, about 1 inch. I like those about 1 inch from the edge of the zipper. It just seemed to have a little bit more balance when it wasn't right on the edge, and it made the corners able to turn a little bit better. So you see a little bulk there. I've got 1 inch here and 1 inch here for the straps. Okay, then you're just going to lay the back face down on the front, and then you're going to stitch around. You're going to use that very last all the way around triple stitch to stitch all the way around your bag. You can trim your seam allowance all the way around. Then if you want to go in and do a overcast stitch all the way, go ahead. Then you're going to need to slash your stabilizer. You're going to unzip and you're going to turn your bag right side out. So it's really that easy. The bag is completed. You've got your little hanging loops stitched to the inside of your bag. I used some leftovers. I just had some fat quarters, so I just sewed my leftover pieces together. A couple of hints. This was my first one. I did just a straight grain. Should have known better. If you did a 90-degree angle joint on the patchwork for your strip, when I got ready to sew through this with a decorative stitch, I was stitching through multiple layers of fabric. The machine did fine, but it did get a little bulky. So you might want to do the joints at a 90-degree angle, just like you would do a quilt binding. I folded it in half, pressed it, fold the raw edges to the center, and folded it in half again. I believe my hardware for this was more than a half of an inch. I did find a half-inch hardware. I think this was 3/4. So I made my straps accordingly for a 3/4 strap. Did the little adjustment slider on it, and in no time I had a bag, and I've made 3 or 4 of these. For the zippers, they've got a fairly small pull. I would go ahead and when I finish this up or give it away, I would put a little piece of ribbon or something in there as a zipper pull so that it's something to hang on to. And that was fun. I'm really close to being out, but I wanted to show you another version of this bag that I did. Since this is my last one, I'm going to really overwhelm you guys. I like a wider bag instead of a long and skinny one. So I created a wide pocket exactly the same way. I just had my zipper going across my hoop this way. And so then when I wanted to do the back of it, I wanted 2 pockets. I wanted an open pocket here, and I wanted a closed zipper pocket here. So whether it's for my cell phone, whether it's for my sunglasses, I went ahead and with the same concept as putting the one pocket on the back of the bag, I did it with the same concept as two. This is going to have a fold line here. I'm going to lay the pocket this way, sew it on, flip it, and then it's going to attach, the pocket's going to be here. This one the same way. I'm going to have a zipper on this bag here. I hope that makes it as clear as mud. So this is how you can go ahead and adjust these purses to be very personalized. Let me show you my my white. There's my white pocket for my front of my bag. So this is what the front of my bag is going to look like. So the top is a little bit narrower. I've got white pockets. So these are my two. I did it in the GR hoop. This is going to be my open pocket. There's going to be a fold across here, and then I'm just going to sew it along this side, flip it over, and then this is going to be my other little zipper pocket. So I took my same zipper guide and put it across the top there, did my initial there so that this could be, you know, a zipper for my cell phones, for other necessities, so that I get a little bit more organized than just having one big volume. All right, that's enough about me. Let's go back to the PowerPoint and some of the new things. Oh my God, if you guys have not experienced the new Skyline 7 or the 500E, I don't think we can have too many machines, and these are great complements to the 15,000 or the 12,000 or your embroidery machines now. They've got nice hoop size, they've got wonderful sewing features, the S7. I've had an opportunity to play with them a little bit. They are absolutely amazing. Please take a look. They are incredible machines. Not that the 15,000 isn't, but they're really awesome machines. The other thing I've fallen in love with, and I'm not a free arm quilter, but if you don't have room for a long arm, check out the Artistic 18SD. SD stands for sit down. It comes in a little table, and you just sit down at it. You've got all this room in here. It is absolutely a phenomenal machine for the people who want to do more quilting, but they need that extra space in their machine. Awesome, awesome machine. Okay, some of the new features that we're going to be releasing soon, and this is kind of a sneak peek. We have version 2.01 coming within the next couple of weeks, and it's going to include couching embroidery designs. And I have a sample of some of them down below. These are going to be some designs. What this does, it comes with a foot with, or it doesn't come with a foot. A foot will be available. And the feet will have different size openings for your different widths of yarn. And then they have a little spring that will keep your yarn in your foot. And then, like, here's an example. Then you feed your yarn through, and as it's embroidering, it is stitching down the yarn so that you get to add more dimension to your project. So I am one that I really love surface embellishment, so I'm really excited about seeing this. Okay, and we've got the 100 quilt blocks in 50 days. That's on our website. There are kits available. They are Michael Miller fabrics. Every educator put together a block, and then another educator put it all together and made this wonderful, colorful quilt that's just a lot of fun. So you can kind of really play a lot of different techniques. You get to play with small blocks. You get to be building blocks. All right, don't forget that we have 4 apps for the 15,000. We know that the AccuEditor or the AccuEdit and AccuMonitor comes with it. We've talked about and presented AccuDesign app, and it is good for any embroidery machine. And this allows you to take playing with your embroidery with you on your iPad. And now we have a new app called the AccuSetter. This is where you place the design where you desire in the hoop by taking a picture of it with your iPad and then manipulating the design. Let me explain that a little further. You hoop your fabric, and you know, like a striped fabric, and you maybe didn't quite get that striped fabric straight in your hoop, and you've got your design on your 15,000, maybe you want to do a border design in that stripe, you bring in that design, you take a picture of your hooped fabric. Then with manipulation within the AccuSetter, you can place that design exactly in that striped fabric right where you want it, whether it's in a stripe or halfway on and halfway off of a stripe, wherever you want it, you can place it. Then you send it back to your machine and it will be exactly where you want it in that hoop. It is absolutely the most phenomenal technology I've seen, and I'm really excited about it. Obviously, you can tell. All right. Again, I'm going to double check to see if there's any questions. I don't see any messages. Doesn't look like anybody had any questions, so I think we are good. I want to thank you guys, everybody that's attended any of the webinars that we've been given for the last, I think it's been 3 years. I have a little question mark here. Let's see. Just some questions have been answered. I'm going to cough. I'm sorry. Okay, we've got some. I think we're good. Again, I want to just thank you guys for joining us the last 3 years. We are going into a different format that's going to be a Craftsy-like class, and I want to appreciate every dealer who has partake of these classes and have supported us along the way. Thank you. Have a great day, and we will be seeing you later. Thank you, guys.